The war between humanity and the Vorthak began 18 months after the discovery of the asteroid processing facility, but it was unlike any conflict the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the command center of the massive space station that had been built specifically for coordinating the extermination campaign, watching displays that showed human fleets moving toward every known Vorthak position in the galaxy. This was not a war fought over territory or resources. This was not a conflict where surrender or negotiation was possible. Humanity had decided that the Vorthak species would be completely erased from existence, and every human ship, station, and colony was working toward that single goal. Captain Jake Morrison commanded the heavy battleship UES Retribution, one of 40 similar vessels that had been built using technology reverse-engineered from captured Vorthak systems. The ship was designed for one purpose: killing Vorthak as efficiently as possible. Jake's crew was no longer the diverse group of scientists and explorers who had made first contact with the crystal-skinned aliens. They were specialists in destruction, every one of them motivated by memories of the children who had been tortured and eaten in Vorthak facilities. "Captain, we're approaching the Vorthak homeworld," reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Bell, the ship's navigation officer. "Fleet composition shows 237 human vessels converging on the target. The Vorthak defense fleet appears to be approximately 60 ships." Jake nodded grimly as he studied the tactical display. The Vorthak had superior technology, but humans had something the crystal-skinned predators had not expected: absolute determination to see their enemies extinct. "Signal the fleet. Begin the bombardment as soon as we're in range. No communication with Vorthak forces. No offers of surrender. Destroy everything." Dr. Lisa Carter worked in a laboratory aboard the Retribution, but she was no longer studying alien biology to understand and cooperate with other species. Her research now focused entirely on finding new ways to kill Vorthak more effectively. She had developed several weapons specifically designed to exploit the vulnerabilities of crystalline biology, including a virus that could cascade through Vorthak collective consciousness networks and kill entire groups simultaneously. "Captain, the biological weapon is ready for deployment," Lisa reported over the ship's communication system. "Once we release it into their atmosphere, it should spread through their population centers within hours. The cascade effect through their consciousness network means that every Vorthak on the planet will die within days." Jake felt no satisfaction in ordering the use of biological weapons, but he felt no hesitation either. The Vorthak had forfeited any right to mercy when they chose to prey on human children. "Deploy the weapon as soon as we establish orbital control. I want this world completely sterile when we're finished." The battle for the Vorthak homeworld lasted 6 hours and ended with the complete destruction of the Vorthak defense fleet. Human ships had taken casualties, but the superior numbers and absolute determination of the human forces overwhelmed the crystalline vessels. As Jake watched Vorthak ships explode on his view screen, he thought about the records they had found showing 43 extinct species. Each of those civilizations had probably fought just as hard to survive, but they had faced the Vorthak alone. Humanity was not fighting alone. The entire species was united in their determination to exterminate the Vorthak completely. Every human colony had contributed ships and personnel to the war effort. Even civilian vessels had been armed and pressed into service as support ships and troop transports. Captain Amy Foster had been promoted and given command of ground forces that were tasked with assaulting Vorthak planetary installations. Her experiences investigating the disappearances on New Dakota had made her one of the most knowledgeable humans about Vorthak tactics and psychology. She led the assault teams that cleared Vorthak facilities on a dozen different worlds, always finding the same horrifying evidence of systematic predation. The facility on Vorthak Prime contained processing equipment for at least 50,000 humans, Amy reported to Admiral Sullivan after the homeworld assault was complete. "We also found storage areas with remains from dozens of different species. The Vorthak weren't just hunting humans, Admiral. They were the apex predators for this entire region of the galaxy." Admiral Sullivan studied the reports from the homeworld assault while coordinating attacks on Vorthak facilities throughout the galaxy. The scale of Vorthak predation was beyond what anyone had imagined. They had been systematically exterminating species for over 1,000 years, perfecting their techniques and expanding their hunting grounds across dozens of star systems. "How many Vorthak installations have we destroyed so far?" Sullivan asked her operations officer. 147 facilities across 31 star systems, Admiral. We've also destroyed their entire merchant fleet and most of their civilian transport vessels. Intelligence estimates suggest that we've killed approximately 60% of their total population. Sullivan nodded coldly. 60% was good progress, but it wasn't enough. Humanity had committed to complete extinction of the Vorthak species, and anything less than 100% success would mean that the crystal-skinned predators might eventually recover and resume their hunting activities. "What about the Vorthak ships that fled toward the outer galaxy?" Sullivan asked. "We're tracking 17 different groups of fleeing Vorthak vessels," the operations officer replied. "Captain Morrison's task force is pursuing the largest group, approximately 30 ships heading toward the Magellanic Clouds. Captain Foster's ground forces are preparing to assault the remaining Vorthak colonies in this galaxy before they can evacuate." Jake Morrison had been pursuing fleeing Vorthak ships for 3 months, following them across thousands of light years as they tried to escape human vengeance. The crystalline aliens had finally abandoned their pretense of being peaceful researchers and were running for their lives, but humans were faster and more determined. "Captain, we've got them cornered in the Kepler 442 system," reported Commander Blake from his tactical station. Ryan had been promoted and was now Jake's second in command, specializing in the destruction of Vorthak vessels. 15 Vorthak ships have taken defensive positions around the 4th planet. They're broadcasting surrender offers. Jake studied the tactical display without any expression of sympathy. The Vorthak had never offered surrender to any of the 43 species they had exterminated. They had not offered mercy to the human children they had tortured and consumed. Ignore their surrender broadcasts, deploy the Cascade virus, and destroy all their ships. Then sterilize the planet in case any Vorthak made it to the surface. The final battle in the Kepler 442 system lasted less than 2 hours. Human ships surrounded the Vorthak vessels and systematically destroyed them, while biological weapons rendered the planet below uninhabitable for crystalline life forms. As the last Vorthak ship exploded, Jake felt a sense of completion rather than victory. This had not been a war in any traditional sense. This had been an extermination campaign, and it was nearly finished. Dr. Lisa Carter monitored the biological weapons as they spread through the atmosphere of the planet below. The virus she had developed specifically targeted Vorthak crystalline biology and was completely harmless to other forms of life. Within hours, every crystal formation on the planet that might have been a Vorthak life form was dissolving into harmless mineral components. "Captain, biological scans of the planet show no remaining Vorthak life signs," Lisa reported. "The Cascade virus has completed its work. This system is clear." Jake opened a communication channel to Admiral Sullivan back at Human Command Headquarters. "Admiral, this is Captain Morrison, reporting completion of Operation Final Solution. The last known group of fleeing Vorthak vessels has been eliminated. Kepler 442 system is clear of all crystalline life forms." Sullivan's voice came back with satisfaction and exhaustion. "Confirmed, Captain Morrison. Intelligence reports no remaining Vorthak installations or ships anywhere in known space. Ground forces have completed sterilization of their former colonies. As of this moment, the Vorthak species is extinct." The news spread through human space within hours. After 18 months of systematic extermination campaigns, humanity had achieved what they had promised: complete elimination of the species that had dared to hunt human children. The reaction in human colonies was not celebration, but rather a grim satisfaction that justice had been served. Other species in the galaxy watched the conclusion of the human-Vorthak war with emotions ranging from awe to terror. Humanity had demonstrated something that no other species had ever accomplished: the complete military extinction of an advanced spacefaring civilization. The peaceful explorers who had joined the Galactic Federation as diplomats and researchers had revealed themselves to be the galaxy's most efficient killers when sufficiently motivated. Captain Amy Foster stood in the ruins of the last Vorthak facility, watching human engineers place memorial markers for the victims of Vorthak predation. The markers included names of humans who had been killed but also symbols representing the 43 extinct species whose remains had been found in Vorthak storage facilities. The discovery arrived at the coordinates Amy Foster had provided, and what Captain Jake Morrison saw through the view screen made him understand that humanity was facing something far worse than anyone had imagined. The Vorthak facility was massive, built into a large asteroid that had been hollowed out and converted into what looked like an industrial complex. Ships moved in and out of the facility constantly, and the energy readings coming from inside the asteroid were enormous. "Captain, I'm detecting human life signs inside that facility," reported Dr. Kevin Walsh from his science station. His voice was tight with stress as he read the scanner data. "Thousands of them. But the readings are strange. Many of the humans appear to be sedated or unconscious." Commander Ryan Blake checked his tactical systems and found something that made his stomach turn. "Captain, there are organic waste disposal systems operating inside that facility, large-scale systems designed for processing biological matter." Jake felt something cold settle in his chest as he began to understand what they had discovered. "How many human life signs, Kevin?" "At least 3,000, Captain, maybe more. The facility is huge and our scans can't penetrate all the way to the center." Jake turned to his communications officer. "Send a priority message to Earth Command and every human colony in this sector. Tell them we've discovered that the Vorthak are not peaceful researchers. They're predators who have been systematically kidnapping humans for unknown purposes. All cooperation with Vorthak facilities should stop immediately." "Captain, we're getting a transmission from the facility," the communications officer reported. "They're demanding that we leave immediately. They claim this is a private research station and we have no authority to be here. Tell them we're conducting a rescue operation to recover kidnapped human citizens," Jake replied. "Ryan, prepare the shuttles for a boarding mission. We're going to get our people out of there." What happened next changed everything Jake thought he knew about the alien species humanity had befriended. As the Discovery's shuttles approached the asteroid facility, the Vorthak ships opened fire without warning. Not with warning shots or attempts to disable human vessels, but with weapons designed to kill. The first human shuttle was destroyed instantly, taking 12 crew members with it. The second shuttle managed to reach the facility's docking bay, but the team inside found something that would haunt humanity forever. Commander Blake led the boarding team into the Vorthak facility and discovered the truth about their new alien friends. The facility was a processing center where humans were being studied, experimented on, and systematically killed. Rooms full of sedated humans were connected to machines that monitored their biological functions, while Vorthak scientists conducted tests on their bodies and minds. But the worst discovery was in the deeper sections of the facility. Blake's team found storage areas containing the preserved remains of humans who had already been processed. Men, women, and children had been dissected, studied, and their body parts stored for what appeared to be consumption. The Vorthak weren't just killing humans for research, they were eating them. "Captain, you need to see this," Blake transmitted from inside the facility. His voice was shaking with rage and disgust. "There are storage rooms full of human remains, and there are records here. The Vorthak have files on dozens of other species. They've done this before, Captain. Many times." Dr. Walsh had been analyzing the Vorthak data files that Blake's team had accessed. What he found made him realize that humanity had encountered something far more dangerous than a simple predator
species.
"Captain, according to these records, the Vorthak have completely exterminated 43 different intelligent species over the past 1,000 years. They use the same pattern every time. Peaceful first contact, research agreements, then systematic harvesting until the entire species is extinct." Jake felt something break inside him as he processed this information. The friendly aliens who had offered medical advances and agricultural improvements were actually the galaxy's most successful serial killers. They had perfected a system for gaining trust, studying their victims, and then consuming entire civilizations. "Get our people out of there, Ryan," Jake ordered. "Rescue everyone you can, and then we're going to destroy that facility completely." Blake's team managed to rescue nearly 2,000 humans from the facility, but many of them were in terrible condition. The Vorthak experiments had left physical and psychological damage that would take years to heal. The rescued humans told stories of being sedated, transported to the facility, and subjected to painful tests while Vorthak scientists studied their reactions to fear, pain, and desperation. Among the rescued was Amy Foster's brother and his family. They had been taken just days earlier and were scheduled for processing within hours of the rescue. Amy's 3-year-old niece didn't understand what had happened to her, but she cried whenever she saw anything that looked like crystal or heard harmonic sounds similar to Vorthak communication. When the rescue was complete, Jake gave the order that would begin humanity's transformation from peaceful explorers to something the galaxy had never seen before. Destroy the facility. Complete destruction. I want nothing left that could be used to harm another human being. The Discovery's weapons reduced the asteroid facility to glowing debris, but Jake knew this was only the beginning. The Vorthak had research stations throughout human space, and they had files on thousands of human colonies. This had been just one facility among many, and there were probably similar installations wherever the Vorthak operated. The news of the Vorthak's true nature spread through human space faster than anyone had expected. The rescued humans told their stories to news reporters and government officials. The evidence from the facility was analyzed by human scientists, who confirmed that the Vorthak were indeed systematic predators who had been studying human biology to find the most efficient ways to kill and consume humans. But the most important thing that happened was not the spread of information. It was the emotional response of the human species to learning that their children had been kidnapped, tortured, and eaten by aliens who had pretended to be friends. Admiral Kate Sullivan had been in charge of human defense forces for 20 years, but she had never seen anything like the response to the Vorthak revelation. Every human colony began demanding weapons and military protection. Civilian ships started arming themselves. Scientists began working on ways to hurt the Vorthak rather than cooperate with them. They made a mistake, Admiral Sullivan told the emergency session of the Human Colonial Council. They studied our biology and our psychology, but they didn't understand what happens when humans get protective of our families. Every human in this galaxy now knows that the Vorthak eat children. There won't be any negotiations or diplomatic solutions. This ends only when every Vorthak in existence is dead. Dr. Lisa Carter had been working with the Vorthak on New Dakota when the news broke. She barely escaped the colony alive when human colonists stormed the Vorthak research facility and killed every alien they could find. The colonists didn't want to capture Vorthak for questioning or study. They wanted revenge for the families that had been taken. Lisa found herself reassigned to a new job that would have been unthinkable just weeks earlier. Instead of studying how to cooperate with alien species, she was now researching ways to exterminate them. Her first assignment was to analyze Vorthak biology and find weaknesses that human weapons could exploit. They have a crystalline biology. That's completely different from anything we've seen before, Lisa reported to Admiral Sullivan. But that also means they have vulnerabilities that carbon-based life forms don't have. Certain electromagnetic frequencies can disrupt their cellular structure and their collective consciousness network that makes them so efficient at coordinating their hunting also makes them vulnerable to cascade failures. Captain Morrison received new orders that reflected humanity's changed priorities. Instead of exploring new worlds and making peaceful contact with alien species, the Discovery was now hunting Vorthak ships and facilities throughout human space. Jake found that he didn't miss the peaceful exploration missions at all. Every time he thought about the children who had been tortured and killed in that asteroid facility, he felt something cold and determined settle in his mind. The Vorthak tried to maintain their diplomatic facade even after their true nature was exposed. Ambassador Harmonia's frequency sent messages to human leaders claiming that the facility had been operated by a rogue faction and that the main Vorthak government wanted to maintain peaceful relations with humanity. Admiral Sullivan's response was broadcast to every human colony and every alien species in the local galaxy. There will be no negotiations with the Vorthak. There will be no diplomatic solutions or peace treaties. They came to our space, they gained our trust, and they used that trust to kidnap and eat our families. Every Vorthak ship, station, and world will be destroyed. Every member of their species will be killed. This is not a threat or a negotiating position. This is a promise. The other species in the Galactic Federation watched in shock as humanity began mobilizing for what could only be described as a war of extinction. 6 months passed after the first meeting between humans and the Vorthak. The crystal-skinned aliens had kept their word about establishing research stations throughout human space. Dr. Lisa Carter found herself working closely with Vorthak scientists on 3 different worlds, sharing human medical data and learning about their advanced healing technologies. Everything seemed to be going exactly as planned. The Vorthak research stations were beautiful structures that looked like they had grown from the ground rather than been built. They used clean energy and seemed to have no negative impact on the local environments. The Vorthak researchers were polite, curious, and eager to learn about human biology and culture. They asked endless questions about human families, human emotions, and the way humans formed communities. Dr. Carter was particularly excited about the work being done on the agricultural world of New Dakota. The Vorthak had helped increase crop yields by 30%, using techniques that worked with natural soil biology, rather than fighting against it. The colonists were grateful for the improvements, and the Vorthak researchers seemed genuinely happy to help. But something was wrong on New Dakota, even though nobody wanted to admit it at first. Lieutenant Amy Foster had been promoted and transferred to New Dakota as a security officer after her excellent work on the Discovery. She was supposed to be helping coordinate security for the joint research projects, but lately she found herself investigating something much more disturbing. Families were disappearing. It started small and quiet. The Henderson family had been farming on the northern continent for 8 years. They had 3 children and were well known in their community. One morning, their neighbors found their farm completely empty. No signs of struggle, no messages, no indication of where they might have gone. Their vehicles were still there, their personal belongings were untouched, but the family was simply gone. The local police assumed they had decided to relocate suddenly. It happened sometimes with farming families who got better offers on other worlds. But Amy Foster had grown up in a farming community, and she knew that families didn't just disappear without telling anyone, especially not families with deep roots and strong community connections. Then the Morrison family vanished. No relation to Captain Jake Morrison of the Discovery, but they had the same last name, and Amy remembered thinking about the coincidence. Like the Hendersons, they left everything behind and seemed to have simply walked away from their lives in the middle of the night. Amy started keeping track of the disappearances. Over 3 months, 12 families had vanished from New Dakota. That was nearly 200 people, including 47 children. The disappearances were scattered across different continents and different communities, which made it hard for local authorities to see the pattern. But Amy saw it, and what she saw made her stomach turn cold with fear. All of the missing families lived within 50 kilometers of Vorthak research stations. Amy tried to report her concerns to her commanding officer, Colonel Pete Jackson, but he dismissed her worries. "Foster, these are farming families. They move around looking for better opportunities. It's not unusual for people to relocate without filing proper paperwork. And besides, the Vorthak have been nothing but helpful since they arrived." Amy knew she was right, but she needed proof. She started spending her off-duty time investigating the disappearance sites, looking for clues that the official investigations had missed. What she found made her realize that something far worse than simple disappearances was happening on New Dakota. At the Henderson farm, she found traces of an unknown chemical compound in the soil near the house. The compound didn't match anything in human databases, but it had properties similar to advanced sedatives. At the Morrison farm, she found similar traces, along with what looked like marks in the ground that could have been made by some kind of heavy lifting equipment. Amy sent samples of the unknown compound to an independent laboratory on Earth, paying for the analysis with her own money. While she waited for results, she continued investigating other disappearance sites. The pattern became clearer with each site she visited: sedative compounds in the soil, unusual ground disturbances, and always, the locations were within range of Vorthak research stations. The laboratory results came back 3 weeks later and confirmed Amy's worst fears. The compound was not only an extremely powerful sedative, but it was designed specifically to work on human brain chemistry. The lab technician who sent the report included a personal note saying that whoever created this compound knew more about human neurology than most human doctors. Amy realized she needed help, so she contacted her old crewmate, Dr. Lisa Carter. Lisa was working at the main Vorthak research facility on New Dakota, and Amy hoped she might have noticed something unusual about their new alien partners. They met at a small restaurant in the colony's main city, far from any Vorthak facilities. Amy explained what she had discovered about the missing families and showed Lisa the laboratory analysis of the sedative compound. Lisa's face went pale as she read the report. "Amy, this is impossible. I work with the Vorthak every day. They're peaceful researchers. They've helped us improve crop yields, and they're developing medical treatments that could help millions of humans. Lisa, 47 children have disappeared," Amy said quietly. 12 entire families, all near Vorthak stations, all with traces of an alien sedative in the soil around their homes. This isn't a coincidence. Lisa stared at the report for a long time before speaking again. "There have been some things that bothered me about the research. The Vorthak ask a lot of questions about human families and human children. They wanted detailed information about human reproductive biology and child development patterns. I thought it was just scientific curiosity." "What kind of questions?" Amy asked. "They wanted to know about human bonding behaviors, how parents respond to threats against their children, how humans react emotionally to loss and separation. They said it was to help them understand human psychology better, but now that you mention it, the questions were very specific." Amy felt a chill run down her spine. "Lisa, I think they're not just studying us. I think they're hunting us." Over the next week, the two women worked together to investigate the Vorthak more carefully. Lisa used her access to the research facility to look for anything unusual, while Amy continued investigating the disappearance sites. What they found was worse than either of them had imagined. Lisa discovered that the Vorthak had been conducting detailed scans of every human they worked with. The beautiful crystal technology wasn't just for research. It was also a sophisticated biological analysis system that could map human DNA, brain patterns, and emotional responses. The Vorthak had files on thousands of humans across multiple colonies. Amy found more disappearance sites, including some that hadn't been reported to authorities. The total number of missing humans was approaching 500 people across 7 different worlds, all near Vorthak research stations, all with traces of the alien sedative. The breakthrough came when Amy managed to track the movement of Vorthak transport ships. Using colony traffic control records, she discovered that Vorthak vessels were making regular trips between their research stations and a facility in an uninhabited system 3 light-years away. The trips happened every few weeks and always after clusters of human disappearances. "We need to see what's at that facility," Amy told Lisa during another secret meeting. "That's impossible," Lisa replied. "We don't have access to ships that can make that journey. And even if we did, we couldn't investigate a Vorthak facility without causing a diplomatic incident. Then we need help," Amy said. "We need to contact someone with the authority and resources to investigate this properly." Amy sent an encrypted message to Captain Jake Morrison on the Discovery, explaining everything she and Lisa had discovered. She included the laboratory analysis of the sedative compound, the disappearance patterns, the transport ship movements, and the biological scanning evidence that Lisa had found. Jake read the message 3 times before calling his senior staff to an emergency meeting. Commander Ryan Blake had been suspicious of the Vorthak from the beginning, and the evidence Amy provided confirmed his worst fears. Dr. Carter's counterpart on the Discovery, Dr. Kevin Walsh, analyzed the biological scanning data and concluded that the Vorthak possessed technology that could map human vulnerabilities with frightening precision. "Captain, we need to investigate that facility Amy mentioned," Ryan said grimly. "If even half of what she's discovered is true, then we've made first contact with something that sees humans as prey, not friends." Jake made the decision that would change everything. "Set course for the coordinates Amy provided. We're going to find out what the Vorthak are really doing out there. And Ryan, bring the ship to full combat readiness. I have a feeling we're not going to like what we find." As the Discovery traveled toward the unknown Vorthak facility, Amy Foster received a message that made her blood run cold. Her brother's family, who lived on the far side of New Dakota, had not responded to communications in 3 days. Colony security had found their farm empty, with no signs of struggle and no indication of where they might have gone. 2 years after the last Vorthak died in the Kepler 4E42 system, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Discovery, which had been rebuilt and returned to its original mission of exploration. The ship looked the same as it had before, first contact with the crystal-skinned predators, but everything else about humanity's place in the galaxy had changed forever. Jake was no longer the curious explorer who had eagerly approached alien vessels hoping to make new friends. He remained polite and diplomatic during first contact situations, but every conversation with a new species now included a simple warning. Humanity judged other civilizations by their actions, not their words, and species that harmed humans faced complete extinction. The message had spread throughout the galaxy faster than human ships could travel. Species that had never heard of Earth or seen a human knew the story of what happened to the Vorthak. The crystal-skinned aliens had been apex predators who had successfully exterminated 43 different civilizations over 1,000 years. But they had made the mistake of hunting human children, and humanity had erased them from existence. In response, Admiral Kate Sullivan had been promoted to Supreme Commander of Human Defense Forces and now oversaw not just human military assets, but also a network of monitoring stations that watched for signs of predatory behavior among alien species. Her job was no longer defending human colonies from external threats, but rather ensuring that no species ever again made the mistake of viewing humans as prey. Admiral, we're receiving a first contact transmission from a previously unknown species in the Centauri sector, reported her communications officer. They're requesting permission to establish diplomatic relations with humanity. Sullivan reviewed the preliminary data about the new species while considering how to respond. First contact protocols had changed significantly since the Vorthak incident. Humanity no longer approached new species with optimistic curiosity. Every first contact now began with a comprehensive background investigation to determine whether the aliens had any history of predatory behavior. What does intelligence say about their background? Sullivan asked. Long-range reconnaissance indicates they've had peaceful contact with 7 other species in their region. No evidence of aggressive expansion or predatory behavior. They appear to be genuine traders and researchers, Admiral. Sullivan nodded and authorized the first contact, but she also ordered a full battle group to remain on standby near human space. The galaxy had learned that humans were willing to be friends and allies, but they had also learned that human friendship came with absolute protection for human citizens and terrible consequences for anyone who violated that protection. Dr. Lisa Carter had returned to her original specialty of studying alien biology, but her research now focused on identifying potentially dangerous species before they could threaten humanity. She had developed techniques for analyzing alien psychology and biology that could predict predatory behavior with remarkable accuracy. Her work had already identified 3 species that showed warning signs similar to the early Vorthak profile. The hegemony species in the outer spiral shows some concerning patterns, Lisa reported to Admiral Sullivan during their weekly briefing. They've had contact with 12 different species over the past century, but detailed analysis shows that 3 of those species have since gone extinct under suspicious circumstances. Sullivan made a note to increase surveillance of the hegemony and their activities. Humanity would not wait for another species to begin harvesting operations before taking action. The galaxy had learned that humans were capable of complete species extinction, and humanity intended to use that reputation to prevent future atrocities. Captain Amy Foster had been given command of a new type of vessel designed specifically for rapid response to threats against human citizens. The UES Guardian was faster than exploration ships and more heavily armed than traditional military vessels. Amy's mission was to ensure that no human colony ever again faced the kind of systematic predation that had occurred during the early days of Vorthak operations. Captain, we're receiving a distress signal from the mining colony on Rigel 7th, reported her navigation officer. They're reporting that an unknown alien vessel has been observed near their system and several mining Crews have failed to report in. Amy felt the familiar cold determination settle in her mind as she considered the possibilities. Set course for Rigel 7 maximum speed, and signal Admiral Sullivan that we may have a potential predation situation developing. The Guardian reached Rigel 7 within 18 hours and found a situation that might have developed very differently if it had occurred before the HFY War. An unknown alien species had indeed been observing the human mining colony, and preliminary investigation suggested they might have been planning some kind of harvesting operation. But the aliens fled immediately when they detected the approaching human warship. They had clearly heard the stories about what happened to species that threatened humanity, and they chose to abandon whatever plans they might have had rather than risk human retaliation. "Alien vessel is departing the system at maximum speed, Captain," reported Amy's tactical officer. "They're broadcasting what appears to be an apology and a promise not to return to human space." Amy authorized the alien ship to depart but made sure they understood that humanity would be watching their activities in the future. The incident was reported to Admiral Sullivan and added to the growing database of species that had shown initial signs of predatory behavior, but chosen to modify their actions after learning about human capabilities. Jake Morrison continued his exploration missions, but first contact situations now unfolded very differently than they had before the HFY War. When the Discovery encountered new species, the aliens often approached with extreme caution and elaborate demonstrations of peaceful intent. "Captain, the new species we contacted in the Vega system is requesting a meeting," reported his communications officer. "But they're insisting that the meeting take place in neutral space with representatives from 3 other species present as witnesses. They want to make sure there are no misunderstandings about their intentions." Jake approved the arrangement, understanding that the galaxy's species had learned to be very careful about how they interacted with humanity. The peaceful first contact he had hoped for with the HFY had ultimately been achieved, but only after humanity had demonstrated the consequences of deception and predation. Dr. Lisa Carter attended the meeting with the Vega species as humanity's xenobiology expert. The aliens were clearly nervous about the encounter, and their first words were reassurances that they had never harmed any intelligent species and had no intention of threatening humanity in any way. "We have heard the stories about the crystal beings who tried to hunt humans," the alien representative said through translation devices. "We want you to know that our people find such behavior horrifying and completely contrary to our values. We hope that our species can develop the same kind of peaceful relationship that humans maintain with other civilized races." Lisa nodded politely and began the standard first contact protocols that had been developed after the HFY incident. The procedures were more thorough than the original Federation guidelines, including detailed biological and psychological assessments designed to identify any species with predatory tendencies. The Vega species passed all the assessments and were eventually welcomed into the growing network of species that maintained friendly relations with humanity. But like all of humanity's new allies, they understood that the friendship came with absolute respect for human safety and severe consequences for anyone who violated that respect. Admiral Sullivan reviewed reports from dozens of first contact situations and found a pattern that would have surprised the humans who had originally joined the Galactic Federation as peaceful explorers. The galaxy was becoming more peaceful, but not because of diplomacy or international agreements. Other species were choosing peaceful behavior because they had learned what happened to predators who threatened humanity. Intelligence reports show a significant decrease in aggressive expansion and predatory behavior among known species, Sullivan's analysis officer reported. Several species that previously showed concerning patterns have modified their behavior after learning about the HFY incident. Others have voluntarily shared information about potential threats in their regions. Sullivan was satisfied with the results, but she remained vigilant. Humanity had achieved peace in their region of the galaxy through demonstrated strength rather than negotiated treaties. As long as other species remembered what happened to the HFY, human colonies would remain safe from systematic predation. The story of the HFY extinction had become a legend that spread far beyond the regions where humans traveled. Species in distant galaxies had heard about the crystal beings, who had successfully harvested dozens of civilizations until they made the mistake of hunting human children. The response had been swift and absolute. Complete species extinction carried out with systematic efficiency that shocked the galactic community. Jake Morrison received a message from a species in the Andromeda Galaxy requesting permission to establish peaceful contact with humanity. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Discovery and watched the stars bend around them as they dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The year was 2387, and humanity had spread across 12 star systems, living peacefully with dozens of alien species in something called the Galactic Federation. Jake had been exploring space for 15 years, and he still got excited every time they found something new. "Captain, we're getting signals from the fourth planet," said Commander Ryan Blake from his station. Ryan was the ship's tactical officer, and he always sounded serious about everything. "The signals are coming in patterns. This looks like intelligent life." Jake smiled and walked over to the communication station where Lieutenant Amy Foster was working with the translation computers. Amy was young, but she was the best at figuring out alien languages. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls as she tried to make sense of the signals coming from the planet below. "I think I've got something, Captain," Amy said with excitement in her voice. "The patterns are mathematical at first, then they shift to something more complex. They're trying to talk to us." Dr. Lisa Carter looked up from her science station. Lisa was the ship's expert on alien life, and she had studied more species than anyone else in human space. Her eyes were bright with curiosity as she watched the data flowing across her screens. "The energy signatures are fascinating, Jake. Whatever these beings are, they use technology that's completely different from anything we've seen before." Jake nodded and sat down in his captain's chair. First contact with a new species was always dangerous, but it was also the most important thing humans could do. Every new friend they made in the galaxy made humanity safer and stronger. "Amy, send them the standard first contact message. Mathematics first, then basic concepts, then let's see if we can establish real communication." The next few hours were tense as the two species tried to understand each other. The aliens on the planet sent back mathematical sequences that showed they understood human numbers and basic physics. Then they started sending more complex information about their world and their people. Amy worked harder than Jake had ever seen her work, building a translation system that could handle this new alien language. "Captain, I think they call themselves the Vorthak," Amy announced after several hours of work, "and they want to meet with us. They're sending coordinates for a meeting place in space away from their planet." Ryan checked his tactical systems and frowned slightly. "That's unusual, Captain. Most species invite us to visit their home world. For first contact meetings, why do they want to meet in empty space?" Dr. Carter looked thoughtful as she studied the data. "Maybe they're being cautious. Some species prefer neutral locations for first meetings. It could be a sign of wisdom, not suspicion." Jake considered this carefully. After 15 years of first contact missions, he had learned to trust his instincts, but he had also learned that different species had different ways of doing things. "Set course for the coordinates they sent us, but keep our shields ready and our weapons powered down. We want to look friendly, but not helpless." 2 days later, the Discovery arrived at the meeting coordinates. What they saw there took their breath away. A ship unlike anything in human records waited for them. It looked like it was made of living crystal that shifted and changed colors as they watched. The ship was beautiful and strange, and clearly built by a species with technology far beyond what most Federation races possessed. "Incoming transmission. Captain," Amy reported. "They're using the translation protocols we established. Put them on screen," Jake ordered. The main view screen filled with the image of a being that looked almost like a living piece of art. The Vorthak ambassador had a crystalline body that seemed to glow from within with soft blue light. When it spoke, its voice came through the translators as musical and pleasant. "Greetings, humans of the ship Discovery. I am what you might call Ambassador Entity Harmonious Frequency. We have traveled far to meet with your species. We have heard much about humans through the Galactic Federation networks, and we are curious to learn more about your remarkable people." Jake stood up and faced the screen. "Welcome, Harmonious Frequency. I am Captain Jake Morrison. We represent humanity and the United Earth Systems. We're honored to meet with your people, and we hope this is the beginning of a friendship between our species. The Vorthak ambassador made a sound that the translators interpreted as pleased laughter. Friendship is exactly what we hope for, Captain Morrison. We are a people who value knowledge and peaceful cooperation above all things. Our society is built on the sharing of resources and information for the benefit of all. Dr. Carter leaned forward with interest. That sounds very much like human values, Ambassador. What kind of knowledge and resources does your people specialize in? We have advanced medical technology that has eliminated most diseases and greatly extended lifespans for many species we work with, the ambassador replied. We also have techniques for improving agricultural production and managing planetary ecosystems. In return, we seek to learn from other species. Each civilization has unique insights that can benefit all. Over the next several hours, the two species exchanged information about their cultures and technologies. The Vorthak seemed genuinely interested in human agricultural methods and planetary management techniques. They offered medical technology that could help humanity live longer and healthier lives. They also expressed fascination with human adaptability and the way human colonies thrived in different environments. We would very much like to establish research stations near some of your colonies, Harmonious Frequency said near the end of their first meeting. We could study the remarkable ways humans adapt to new worlds while sharing our medical advances with your people. This kind of cooperative research has benefited many species in our region of the galaxy. Ryan Blake looked uncomfortable with this request, but he didn't speak up during the formal negotiations. Jake noticed his tactical officer's concern, but the Vorthak offer seemed reasonable. Many species in the Federation had similar research agreements. Dr. Carter was clearly excited by the possibility. The medical advances alone could help millions of humans, Captain, and if we can learn from their ecosystem management techniques, we might be able to terraform marginal worlds much more effectively. Jake made his decision. We would be willing to consider such an arrangement, Ambassador. Of course, we would need to discuss the details with our government and establish proper protocols for any research activities. Of course, Captain. We are patient people, and we understand the need for careful consideration. We have found that the best relationships are built slowly and carefully, with trust earned through consistent actions rather than quick promises. As the meeting concluded, Jake felt optimistic about this new relationship. The Vorthak seemed genuinely peaceful, and their technology could benefit humanity greatly. Amy Foster worked with their communication specialists to establish ongoing communication protocols. Dr. Carter began planning what kind of research projects might be possible. Even Ryan Blake seemed to be warming up to their new potential allies. What none of the humans knew was that during every moment of their meeting, the Vorthak were conducting deep scans of their ship and crew. Advanced sensors hidden throughout the crystal ship were mapping human biology, recording neural patterns and analyzing the psychological responses of each crew member. The Vorthak had perfected these scanning techniques over hundreds of years and dozens of species. The beautiful, crystal technology that impressed the humans so much was actually a highly sophisticated biological analysis system. Every word the humans spoke, every gesture they made, every emotional response they showed was being recorded and studied by Vorthak scientists who were experts in understanding the weaknesses and vulnerabilities of other species. As the Discovery departed from the meeting coordinates, Harmonious Frequency transmitted a coded message back to the Vorthak homeworld. The message contained detailed biological and psychological profiles of the human crew, along with initial assessments of human strengths and potential weaknesses. The message concluded with a recommendation to proceed with the standard harvesting protocol that had been successfully used on 43 other species over the past millennium. The Vorthak were not peaceful researchers seeking knowledge and friendship. They were apex predators who had developed the perfect system for studying, understanding, and eventually consuming entire species. They had learned long ago that the best way to harvest intelligent life was to approach as friends, gain trust, and strike only when their prey was completely unprepared for what was coming. Jake Morrison sat in his ready room that evening, writing his report to Earth Command about this promising first contact. He had no way of knowing that he had just set in motion events that would lead to the complete extinction of the Vorthax species. The hunters had chosen the wrong prey this time,